Hey everyone, welcome to lesson number 3, Composing Hypotheses. Before you begin this lesson, make sure that you've completed the Do Now that can be found on Google Classroom. If you've already done that, then great, you're in the right spot. So today's objective is to compose a hypothesis using the if, then, because format. Before we begin working on composing or writing hypotheses, we should ask ourselves, what is a scientific question? So a scientific question concerns phenomena that are natural, observable, and testable. So they always need to meet these 3 criteria: natural, observable, and testable. So a good tagline to remember is if you're not, you're not science. So if you're not natural, observable, or testable, you're not science. So before we go on, let's stop and check for understanding. So let's go through these 4 questions and determine, based off of our criteria, natural, observable, testable, which of these 4 questions are scientific and which of these 4 questions are non-scientific. So let's start with number 1. Will green plants die without light? So is this natural? Yes. Green plants, we can determine this. We can see this in nature. Is it observable? Yes, we could totally see this. We can see if we design an experiment where plants are not given light, will they die? And then testable, we can determine whether or not these plants will die without light. And then 2, will walking under a ladder cause bad luck? Is this natural? Kind of tough. Not really. Is this observable? You can see someone walk under a ladder, but can you determine if the bad luck is going to be caused by that? Not really. Is this testable? That's a little tough. I would say that number 2 is non-scientific. Are mosquitoes God's way of punishing us? No, I would say this one is also non-scientific. And then, can magnetic fields prevent bees from navigating properly? This one's kind of tough. So, is it natural? Yes. So, there are magnetic fields in the earth that actually not only help bees navigate, but other animals as well. And honestly, even us too, if we use compasses and whatnot. Is this observable? Yes, we actually could see this. Magnetic fields you can't quite see like with the naked eye, but you could probably demonstrate this in some other way. And is this testable? We could design an experiment where we would alter the magnetic fields, maybe using small magnets, to see if bees can still navigate or not. So for this, number 4, I would say is a scientific question. Okay, so now that we've gone over what a scientific question is, let's talk about what is a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is a testable prediction about the results of an experiment and is based on prior knowledge or research. So important part to notice here, it's based on prior knowledge or research. We don't go in and create hypotheses blindly. We base them on something we know in the past or some sort of research that we've done before. Hypotheses are either supported or refuted by experimental data. Remember that important word that we learned when we were learning about the steps of the scientific method, refute. Refute is just another fancy way of saying reject. They are never considered correct or incorrect. All hypotheses are considered valuable by scientists because they may lead to further investigation. So your hypotheses may end up being accepted or rejected by your data. However, they're not considered correct or incorrect because these can determine what changes you might make for future experiments. So now we're going to go on and begin writing hypotheses. But before we start, I'm going to put some criteria out here for you guys so that you can sort of guide yourself as you're working on writing hypotheses. So your hypothesis always needs to be in the if, then, because format. You need to have the independent variable in the if part of the hypothesis, the dependent variable in the then part of the hypothesis, and then you need to demonstrate that your hypothesis is based on some previous knowledge or observations that you have in the because format. So for those who may not remember, an independent variable is the part of the experiment that you would change. The dependent variable is the part of the experiment that you would measure. And then obviously, after the because part, you would put your prior knowledge or observation. And if you're still a little confused, that's okay. We're going to go into practicing these, so hopefully that'll clear some things up for you. So just to break this down, easy way to look at it, if IV, so IV stands for independent variable, then DV, so DV is dependent variable because BK. So BK is background knowledge. So this is essentially just this format, but in easier ways. So if independent variable, then dependent variable because background knowledge. If your hypothesis is always in this format, you will be doing exactly what you need to be doing. So let's go on to skills that you need to identify. So at this time, you should be looking at the independent practice composing hypotheses worksheet that I may have given you in class, or either you may have this for homework. So however you wanted to tackle this. So skill number 1, I can identify the components of a strong hypothesis. So we're going to go through this. So if we're looking at this hypothesis, if moist bread is left in bags for 2 weeks, then the moist bread will grow mold more quickly than dry bread that is left in a bag for 2 weeks, because mold is a living organism and organisms need water to survive. So in this part, the skill, all we need to determine are the components of a strong hypothesis, meaning the independent variable, the dependent variable, and your background knowledge. So because we know this format, the if IV, then DV, because BK format, we can easily do this. So if moist bread is left in bags for 2 weeks, that is our independent variable. Moist bread is left in bags for 2 weeks. Then the moist bread will grow mold more quickly than dry bread that is left in a bag for 2 weeks. We know that portion is our dependent variable because it comes after then. Then the moist bread will grow mold more quickly than dry bread that is left in a bag for 2 weeks, because mold is a living organism and organisms need water to survive. So we know everything after the because is our background knowledge because we know this format. If IV, then DV, because BK. Okay, so there are guided practice portions and independent practice portions for skill 1, which you can go through on your own. All you need to do for skill 1 is determine your independent variable, your dependent variable, and your background knowledge. But for now, we're going to move on to skill 2 and 3, just so I can guide you through these. So skill number 2. So given the variables in an experiment, I can compose an advanced proficient hypothesis. So the variables that you'll be given are your independent variable and your dependent variable. So now you're going to work more on writing your hypotheses now that you've been given your independent variable and your dependent variable. So I have given you an example. So in this case, the independent variable is amount of bacteria in a fish tank. Your dependent variable is the lifespan of the fish. So I would do this super easy. In the if, IV, then DV, because BK format. If there is a lot of bacteria in a fish tank, so notice that is my independent variable. There is a lot of bacteria in a fish tank. Then the lifespan of the fish will be short. So, that's a typo. It should say the lifespan of the fish will be short. That's my dependent variable. Sorry about that typo. Because large amounts of bacteria can kill fish. So that's my background knowledge. I know that if there's too much bacteria, the fish will die. So easy. I've already written my hypothesis. If there's a lot of bacteria in a fish tank, then the lifespan of the fish will be short because large amounts of bacteria can kill fish. Okay? So now that you've done that, you're going to work through your guided practice on your own and then move on to your independent practice. So skill number 3, I can compose an advanced proficient hypothesis for a scientific question. So now you're going to be given a scientific question. From the scientific question, you're going to determine what's your independent variable and what's your dependent variable. And from that, you're going to write out your hypothesis. So does chocolate cause pimples? Well, there's no right or wrong question, remember, because the hypothesis is neither correct or incorrect. But what is the independent variable? Does chocolate cause pimples? So in this case, I determined that the independent variable is whether or not you eat chocolate. And the dependent variable, what I'm measuring, is whether or not I get pimples, so the presence of pimples. So from that, I can create my hypothesis. I've determined what my independent variable is. I've determined what my dependent variable is. So really easy. If I eat chocolate, so that's my IV, if you eat chocolate, then I will have pimples. That's my dependent variable. I will have pimples because the high sugar content in chocolate causes pimples. So that's my background knowledge. Okay, so from this, I created a hypothesis. It is if I eat chocolate, then I will have pimples because the high sugar content in chocolate causes pimples. So from this step, you will also go on to work on your guided practice and your independent practice for skills 3. But really quickly, for homework, you have the remainder of class today, and then if you don't finish it today, you'll also do it for homework. You need to finish your composing hypotheses independent practice. So you need to get the guided practice and the independent practice portions of the worksheet for each skill, skill 1, skill 2, and skill 3 done either by the end of class today, and if you don't finish it by the end of class today, this assignment becomes homework and is due at the beginning of next class. Please remember, if you have any questions or if you're still a little confused, you're more than welcome to send me an email or a text asking me questions about this assignment. Thanks, guys. Have a nice day.